Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's guest has been competing since 2019, and she earned her pro card in 2020 at NPC USA's after competing in 2 regional shows and 3 national shows. She works as a full-time senior product designer by day and recently moved back to Australia after working for 7 years in Los Angeles. Welcome to the show, Stephanie Hing. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. What an intro. I've never heard my life kind of pan out like that, but thank you so much. Yeah. Super happy to be here.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy that you're on, and I've followed your journey since the start, and it was just really cool actually to witness you earn your pro card at USA's, because I was competing there and I walked off stage, sat in the audience, and I got to see your moment, and it was just so cool. So I'm happy to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of known each other from our previous teams. So not known each other, but, like by, Instagram and whatnot. So obviously I've been following you and, the podcast and all that stuff. So yeah, crazy how things pan out.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
I love it.
I do remember seeing you backstage there.
Yeah, I think, I do remember that too. I think we connected because of the old team anyway. And then, things have just evolved and here we are. So before we get into everything, I got to ask if there's something you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say there's one thing, but I do get pretty anxious. And from my dancing days, I used to dance from when I was like 3 years to about 15, 16. I used to just get really, really terrified that I'll forget the routine and be in like an Eisteddfod or something on a big stage and everyone's watching and I'm the one person that forgets the routine. So that's kind of like my one thing that I'm like, okay, I started on the right, kind of go through the routine real quick, make sure that's really embedded in my head. But the next thing is, I think to myself, like, I'm here, I'm already a winner. I'm going to go on that stage as a winner, as the most confident person I can, because, as soon as you walk out, they can feel that, confidence. Even though like, I feel a bit of like this imposter kind of syndrome where, I don't necessarily feel like a winner, but I've got to go up there and really exude that winner's mindset and that confidence as you're just like walking up to the square in the middle of the stage. So they're the 2 kind of like things I think about. One not so good, but one, I guess, a little bit more positive.
Totally. And if it relieves some of that anxiety as you step into that like champion mentality, then that helps at least balance it out.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that comes just with like experience of being on a stage. I think it's very different from being in like a costume and doing like a full-on 2-3 minute routine with a group of people, right? And instead of just being in like a little skimpy kind of bikini and showing all. But I think that kind of experience really helped me, especially in my first competition, where I had no idea what was going on and I had no idea what to expect. But I think that really, helped ground me a little bit. So yeah, pretty thankful for that.
I love that you've continued that as well.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of embedded in the person that I am. Being on stage from such a young age, you kind of get used to that and you have a little bit of a thrill, getting up there, putting everything on the line, showing off what you've been working on so hard for. So I think it's kind of a similar situation, but you obviously get a lot less time on the stage, especially being an amateur. But it's still the same type of mindset and still the same kind of like entertainment factor that you have to bring to the stage.
I love that word, entertainment, like really putting on a show and giving that energy that you've been putting into your prep and this process for so long, and then going up there, and it is a thrill. It is a performance.
And the thing is, like, if you know me personally, I'm so not that person. Like, I'm sitting here in my like giant hoodie, which is my partner's, you know, I'm not glamorous by any means, you know, like I don't get my nails done. Like, all this stuff is so foreign to me. Yeah. And so I think when people kind of, you know, maybe they see me in my everyday life, they're like, whoa, like you do that? Like, it's really like quite a change from what I am as a normal day-to-day person. So I think having that kind of, for me at least, I have to put on a little bit of that character. And that's it. I guess that kind of helps me to, you know, put on that kind of face for the stage. But then as soon as I get off, I'm just myself again. So it's kind of just like this, I got to put it on, you know, feel that confident self. And then as soon as I get off, I can just kind of like relax and just be a little bit more me. So yeah, pretty interesting if you know me in, you know, my everyday life.
I can totally relate to that. Like, I don't know the first thing about like makeup or nails or glam or anything. And there's something about like getting in that zone when you are in, like, you're about to go on stage, you're getting ready for show day. Like, it is a bit of an alter ego, or maybe it just, for me, it gives like that even more confidence boost because it's something different. And it's like, this is a costume I only wear for this one day every couple times a year. Yeah.
And it's tricky as well. Like, you know, it gets really expensive, as you know. So for my last couple of shows, like, I started to do my own makeup and I did the DIY tan.
Yes.
You know, that was like super tricky, especially the makeup part. My God. Yeah. But you know, that I still did a Stedfords when I was young. I did plenty of performances. So it was similar in that way. But I think by putting all that effort into your appearance and, you know, putting this other face on, I'm able to kind of get into that character, if you will. Although it's still me, I'm still like, you know, I'm still the same personality on stage. I obviously have to just kind of turn up the notches a little bit to show off what I've been working so hard for.
And I'm really glad you brought up confidence, like straight off the bat, because I was thinking about your journey to becoming a pro and you having to do things that were uncomfortable, including reversing into your national shows. After receiving feedback, you were too lean. So I was actually curious. I was going to ask you what you did to support having confidence on stage, knowing you'd be looking fuller and it was different than what you'd done before.
Yeah, that's tricky. So like, if you're a competitor, you know, like the ultimate goal is to be as lean as you can while having that balance, you know, by looking kind of, you know, healthy, if you will, in quotations. So I went into my first, which was my second show, regional show, Whitney Jones Classic. That was kind of just like a warm-up show, you know, Sandy was there, get some feedback before going into my first national show. And my feedback was, after getting, you know, I won my class, which was awesome. You know, that really hyped me up a bit. But my feedback was, I was too lean. And that's a total opposite mindset, I think, when you're in prep and all you're thinking about is, you know, what you see on the scale, you know, what your measurements are you lean enough is like the first thing that comes to my mind. And I know now that's not the main question I should be asking. Yes, it is super important, you know, that you do come in at the right stage of leanness for you. And I think that's very different for everyone's body. And especially I'm a taller girl. I'm 5'7", so I obviously do have those longer limbs that I need to kind of fill out a lot more. And when I'm on stage, I am definitely one of the smaller competitors in terms of muscle. I really do struggle to put on that weight. So coming in lean for me was like my number one goal at the start. And then getting that feedback, I went back to my coach and she like agreed after seeing me. And that was the first time I met my coach in person. So I guess she kind of saw me in the skin and she, you know, it went really well. So we actually went into the national show. I don't think it was that late after, maybe a week or two after that. So I couldn't really do much between then. I think our game plan was to come back on stage, try and fill out more in peak week, not necessarily put on, a bunch of weight between those 2 weeks, because the shape and everything was there. Like I got good feedback about my glutes and whatever, and my actual routine. So went into Universe. That was my first national show. Actually came out with a 3rd place, and I was just like, what just happened?
Amazing.
I honestly didn't even know what this whole national circuit thing was about. And, I came off stage, my coach and one of my good friends was there off stage, and they were like yelling and screaming. I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but I guess I got 3rd. And I just realized that I was 1 spot from getting my pro card. And I was like, damn, am I right there? I was not expecting that at all. And again, my feedback was that, I was nearly there, come back with the same package, fill out a little bit more if you can. So that was, really good. And that kind of fueled me, and I wasn't really planning on doing this whole national run. I guess between me and my coach, we kind of talked about it, and I just wanted to see where I was in the lineup. This wasn't kind of like a do or die. Like, I want my pro card, I'm going to live and breathe this life for that time. But I think as soon as I got off the stage, and then I saw all my, Fit Body Fusion teammates, we had like a huge group of us, and, only a number of us, placed, and I think a few of them got their pro cards there as well, but majority didn't, place. And I was like, damn, I thought I definitely wasn't in the mix. And that really kind of put a bit of a light bulb in my head, and I was like, maybe I can really go for this. So then I went to nationals, which was, quite soon after, maybe three weeks after. Again, the plan was to really carb up. We actually tried to do a lot more salt in coming into that show and seeing how my body responded to that. And that went a little bit better, because the backstage at my first national show at Universe, it actually took an eternity to get from, it was like a downstairs area, and then you had to wait behind backstage upstairs, and they didn't allow you to bring your pump-up bands. Wow. So me being one of the really small competitors, and still to this day struggling to get delts in my shoulders, that was a big struggle. We were up there for at least half an hour with no pump up, nothing. So yeah, I pumped up, went upstairs, pump gone, go on stage. That was such a fast show, because there was so many competitors as well. You were on and off, and kind of it was a bit of a shamble in my memory. But at least for nationals, which was my second show, we got to pump up, we went straight on stage. Again, I came out with 3rd. And that time, because I knew I was so close, it was a little bit disappointing, to be honest. Because you kind of come with that expectation, you're next in line, So, but then 2 other competitors popped up that weren't at Universe, right? So you just don't know who's going to be there on the day. So I was so close again, one spot away, but I was obviously super happy that I was still there, and I was still up there, getting a good place, and really happy with my look. That was my favorite look thus far. And I had an awesome weekend just with my teammates, and staying with, the girls that to this day are really good friends. So I think that was an awesome experience. But I think me and my coach were like, okay, now we have, maybe 4 weeks or something, a little bit longer, before the last national show of the season, which was USA's. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll go for it, because I'm up there in the mix, let's just see how it goes. But I was just a bit the fire kind of just was a little bit less ignited at that stage. So I just listened to my coach, and I was just I'm just going to do it to do it. And I have no expectations. I don't want to go in there, expecting my pro card or a win or anything. I know I'm in the mix, and I know I'm good enough, but maybe I just need that off season. So I just followed her plan, and she was like, no, we're going to, try and put on a little bit of weight just to make you look fuller and really, you know, pump you up before and just, you know, give them a totally different look. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't really know what that entailed, honestly, at the time. And then she kept on feeding me, even up until the stage, like I was back there having peanut butter on like rice and, you know, fish. I was like eating up a storm backstage. Meanwhile, all the other girls, you know, just having like one rice cake, and I'm sitting there with like a bowl of food, eating, and I was so uncomfortable. You know, the day before, I know I was taking like check-in photos and videos, and my friend's husband, who, you know, I was staying with them, like he was taking the videos, and I just, you know, I didn't feel the same. And when you're so used to going on stage in a certain, you know, look, and you just feel different, right? Yeah. When you're not as lean and you're not looking the same. But, you know, I followed my coach, and you do have those prep goggles on where you can't see what everyone else sees. So I went up there, I went with a different suit. I actually borrowed Angela, my coach's suit. It was a bright red. And she's like, we'll just go in with a totally different look. You know, they've seen you, they know you. You know, Sandy really loved my routine, loved my look and everything. And she was always encouraging to come back. You know, it's right there. You just need to come back and, you know, show up. And that's exactly what I did. And I had zero expectations at USA's. I literally was like so chilled compared to my other shows, because, you know, I didn't have that thought that I was actually going to get it. You know, I really wanted it.
Or was that because of past experience?
I think a little bit of both, honestly. I wasn't as confident in my look, but I just kind of went up there because, you know, I just wanted to show up and see how it did. And if this was the one, it was the one. But I wasn't too phased if it wasn't. Obviously, I would be a little bit disappointed if I came in like, you know, second call outs or something like that. But I think that really did help to kind of shift my focus a little bit, and to be a little bit more confident on stage, and just be like, yeah, I know this, I've done this quite a few times now. You know, this ain't my first rodeo on the national stage. They know my face this season. So whatever happens, happens. And, you know, that just happened to work out for me. And yeah, got my pro card, and that was the end of my kind of national journey, which was awesome.
Wow. And I think you're right that our eyes, like the prep goggles, right? Like they take more time to adapt to those changes than the pace of the changes themselves. So it sounds like really trusting your coach was a big part of you staying on course with the process and following this path, even though it was different than previous ones. So were you surprised that they wanted you fuller, or like in retrospect, you could see it?
I think now I can see it. But so between nationals and USA's, where I got my pro card, I think I put on around 4 pounds, which is a lot in terms of like prep. So you do feel quite different. And I was eating so much up into the show, rather than, you know, most girls are like cutting, doing more cardio, you know, and I'm here just like loving my life. I'm like, is this real life? I remember messaging or calling Angela. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm in prep. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I'm just eating, doing less cardio. Like, I probably had 1 or 2 cardio a week up before the show day. And I was just like, I really don't feel like I'm in prep. Like, this is awesome. Like, if I can go on stage eating this much and not doing this much activity, then, you know, I've really done, like, this is the way I want it to be, right? Like, this is a dream. But yeah, I think I got that trust in her just throughout the season, because I did get that placing that, you know, I wasn't expecting. And obviously every time I went to a national show, we had our whole team there. So, you know, Jamie, all the other coaches were there as well. And they kind of, everyone helps everyone. So when you're we have these like kind of little meetings, and, you know, before stage day, where we, jump in front of them, do our routine, they give us feedback, they give us new kind of macros if we need it. And Jamie and other coaches were always there. So we always got their opinion too. So not only was I getting Angela's opinion, I was also getting other people that I really trusted in the industry. So I think it was a bit of everything. I think taking it, from the professionals, they're already pros, they know what they're doing, they've done this so many times. And, I would also question Angela quite a lot. I'm one to ask a lot of questions. And that's something funny that, my friends and my family do tell me I just ask too many questions and I can't help it. It's just something that I do, and I'm just really inquisitive, and I like to learn and I like to know things. So, I'm such a type A person. I track everything like in my own Excel spreadsheet. And I've done that since actually day one from the team that we both came out, because we kind of, like, if I remember, we got our plans in an email. And that used to drive me a little bit crazy, because I like everything very structured and everything very clean and clear and visual. I come from a design background, so having it like clean and, where I can compare results from one day to the next, 1 week to the next. So I just devised this spreadsheet that is actually ever growing to this day. I kind of customize it as I go through my journey. And I would just watch, my stats, put my macros on there, my cardio, how many calories I burned, what level I would be on. So I could see kind of the changes that my coach was making and how my body responded. So I think I'm able to kind of go back and learn from, previous preps and previous, reverses and stuff like that, where, I'm able to trust what she's doing. So yeah, putting that weight on was super hard, but definitely not as hard as doing an actual reverse. That's a whole nother story.
Well, walk us through that. Like, how did coming out of USA's and going into like a move and life changes and lockdowns and quarantine, like, I want to hear about that transition for you and how it was different than, reversing into a show.
Yeah. So, wow, that kind of brings me up until today, really. Yeah. That's my life. Okay. So my last actual show was at the end of 2020, USA's December. I guess this is kind of like a side story. I'd been on the pill since I was 15 or 16 years old. And that's something that I just thought everyone was doing at the time. So throughout all my career of competing, I was taking it. So thinking that, every month I would get a regular period, and I did, but, it's not actually a natural hormonal, period. So at the end of that year, I kind of decided during prep, I was like, oh, I don't need to take this. Why am I taking this like artificial kind of hormone? But I decided to stop that at the end of December after my last show. So it didn't kind of like taper with my body, or I didn't know what it could do after. So I decided, next year, just, I won't take it anymore. My body will just, snap back into, its a regular cycle. So then the whole, COVID situation happened. Oh no, sorry. This was after COVID. So yeah, stopped taking it. Then we decided to go back home, actually, like quite a few months before we did, because flights were like incredibly expensive. It was just really hard to get back at the time. So we booked them in around July, which was like quite a few months out. So we decided to go back. So I was living in LA at the time, and everything was shut down. We were just waiting to see if the flight was even going to take off. I would call the airline pretty much every second day or daily up until the flight to see if our flight was going to take off. And they pretty much were like, well, we can only guarantee up until 2 hours before. So we basically were like on this 2 hour leash, being like, you could go or you couldn't go. And our life had to be, packed up into suitcases. So going back to Australia specifically has very tight laws. So at the time, only a certain amount of passengers could land in the whole of Australia and in specific states on the same day. So they would like cut off flights out of nowhere. So we decided to take a longer flight. We went via Asia, so we had to stop off. But I looked into all the flight numbers, did all my research, and I saw that this one flight number was getting cancelled a lot less than direct flights. So I quit my job. My boss was like devastated. I tried to make it work from over here because I just loved my team. I loved my job. But that didn't quite work out. We eventually, end of June kind of kept creeping in. We sold everything. We lived off the floor and 2 cushions in our apartment for like the last 3 weeks, and a mattress on the floor. We got rid of everything. Like, I'm telling you, everything, like so much of my wardrobe, everything. Because it was so expensive. We couldn't ship anything back. It was like everything, as you know, was crazy. So we had our fingers and toes crossed. It came to the day we're leaving. We got to the airport, whatever. Thankfully, our flight was fine. And I think I counted like about 8 people in the whole of the economy class, including us. Obviously, it was very tight with, getting the COVID tests before, within a certain, number of hours before the flight. And then at the stopover, we were like chaperoned from our flight to this one closed off area. It was kind of surreal thinking about it. So they like closed off this area of the airport, which was like at the end of kind of a corner of the airport where everyone in transit was just waiting. And there was like a few seats, whatever, people kind of sleeping, people in like the full on like SARS, like head to toe outfits, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Like kind of like a movie situation. They're just like, walking around or sleeping in these outfits. Everyone's masked up, obviously, super tight. And then when our time came, they would chaperone us from there on this kind of train into another roped off area of the gate. And then, put us on the flight. We got back to Sydney. And again, they chaperoned us throughout all these security checkpoints of the airport. And they tested, they looked at all our tests again. And then the actual army, which was helping in Australia, would help us put our luggage on a coach. And we got coached off to an unknown location. So that was always fun. So basically what was happening at the time, everyone that landed from overseas had to do a quarantine for 14 days in a hotel. So, and also just to note, we had to pay for that. So we actually got pretty lucky. We got put in like a serviced apartment. So it had a tiny little kitchen. But other people got some really, really bad situations. And obviously no one could come in. We got tested on the first day we got there, midway, and near the last day we got another COVID test. So they would deliver food to our door, knock on the front door, and we just literally, we couldn't step out of the door. We had to put on our masks to do this, open the door, pick up our food and bring it inside. And anything that went in the hotel room could not go out until we left.
Oh my gosh. And how did they determine what food you got?
So if you had like dietary requirements, when you checked in, you can tell them then. But basically, if my partner doesn't have seafood, so sometimes they'll just accidentally, send a fish meal or whatever, and I would have to call up and be like, hey, you sent the wrong thing, like, can you send some chicken or whatever? And they would send another one back up, but we had to keep the other meal inside the apartment. So it was like, the food was okay. We could order like Uber Eats or whatever, and they would kind of deliver it to the door again. But I kind of went a little bit crazy because like we couldn't work out. Obviously we had no like weights or anything. But we were somewhat used to that because we were in lockdown in LA for over a year, because California had crazy, insane, lockdowns. But at that time, my partner did work at this gym, and we were friends with the owners, so we kind of got this backdoor access, which we were pretty lucky. But it was a tiny little kind of like glorified hotel type gym, but at least it was something at the time. So we were kind of used to that. When we got into quarantine, he's a personal trainer as well, so we would work out together with some bands. We used the pots and pans as like elevation for our push-ups and whatever, our luggage bags that were super heavy. And I hired this treadmill that was like kind of a lifesaver during the time. And that 14 days kind of went by. That was pretty hard. Midway during quarantine, Sydney actually shut down. Which was great news for us. So when we left, we went back into Sydney lockdown, which was very, very much harder than LA lockdown because rules here are crazy. So yeah, we got out, we went back into lockdown. So we had no gym, we couldn't go out of our house except for walking within, I think it was like a 5K distance or something. Couldn't really go to supermarkets with other people, like no shops were open, all that kind of insane stuff. So yeah, I can't remember how long we were in lockdown for, but that was really hard, that part of it, because we had already, been in LA, we've gone through hotel quarantine. We're back at home technically, but it didn't feel like it.
Oh yeah.
Everything was so different. I couldn't see any of my like family or my friends, even though I was at home. So, that took a while to kind of settle back in. And as things slowly started to open up, then, got back to what it is now. So yeah, that kind of whole COVID journey was a lot. And at the same time,
right after your show.
Yeah, well, it was all happening. Like my life last year was just pretty manic when I think about it now. And throughout that time, I was trying to get my cycle back, and I didn't know, I thought something was wrong and nothing was happening, no hormonal kind of changes, nothing like that. And so when I was actually maybe 2 or 3 months post my last show, I got some blood work done over in the States. And there's this company called Hormone Logics that my team works with. And I got the whole panel, especially to do with like women's hormones, all that kind of stuff. And my levels were okay. I think the doctor just said that, at the time, keep on doing what you're doing, it will come back, your hormones will level out. It's just because you've been competing. And, because you've been taking the pill, that your hormones kind of shut off in a way. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll keep on doing what I'm doing, move countries, still nothing, got back here. I'm like, okay, it's been like at least 6 months, what's going on? Is there something wrong with me, basically? And I did tons of research, tons of reading, listen to podcasts, listen to everything that I could get my hands on. So still working with Angela, and I talked to one of the other coaches on the team that's really good at hormones and mapping that out. And I started to take this this supplement protocol, which would help level my blood work out. So I did that. That cost an arm and a leg to get things shipped from the US to Australia. So I spent so much money. I can't say that didn't help or did help. I'm not unsure. But when I kind of got out and it was a few months more, I'm like, okay, things aren't happening. There's something like wrong. Yeah. I'm no longer in that kind of window of it's normal to, not have my cycle back. It's in the window of, okay, something's wrong and I don't know what it is. So I went to my doctor here, and she kind of told me what everyone kind of would say by default, which is like, just rest, it would take some time. And that's like infuriating to me as someone that needs to know what's going on. And especially something to do with your own health. I think it's really like, for me in my head, I was like, no, like you can't just shoo me away. Like, don't just do that to me. Like I need some answers. So I kind of took it upon myself. I made her give me a referral to a specialist. And the first specialist was this guy, and it was still during COVID, so I only could have a phone call. So I got on the phone, and this cost an arm and a leg as well. And he basically was like probably the rudest person I've ever kind of come in contact to in the health world. And he gave me no answers, and he kind of just like sent me this blood worksheet, and he was like, don't ask me any questions now. I can't answer anything for you. I'm like, okay, like, and then I got off the phone and I was like, I'll get these tests, but I don't want to go back to him when he's so like, he's not open. He's not kind of helping me out here. So I actually got this other referral, and this other doctor, this professor didn't have an opening for months and months because she was like very well known. And I called up one day out of the blue, and I was just like, do you have any bookings, any openings soon? And actually someone kind of cancelled their appointment in a few weeks' time. So I took that, and I went to this professor, really well known in the industry here. And I went to her, and she just kind of like changed my outlook on my lifestyle, on what I was doing, and kind of like turned a light bulb on. And I think I just needed that one person that I trusted, to tell me how it is, and to tell me, put it in black and white in front of me, and I'll believe you because you have the credentials. I can't just go to my friend or something, and they're going to tell me the same thing. Like, I guess I just needed someone that really knew what they were talking about and could really assess my situation. And I think I really just kind of trusted her, and she spoke on my level rather than feeling like she was a professor, and she was on, this high horse that she could just tell me what to do. She like really talked about, what I used to do, what my mindset is, what type of person I am. She understood that I'm, very type A. I'm very like, I get anxious, I get stressed out very easily. I need to know what's happening. I'm that person. And I think that all that stuff contributes to your internal mental stress, even though it doesn't feel like it. So she kind of like, I had a few consults with her, but on the first one, she got me to get all this blood work done. So when I got that, I got like, throughout my whole journey, I got so many blood tests. So I forgot that part. I got so many blood tests, so many ultrasounds, all the tests you could think of. And nothing really was told to me. At first, actually, I think the doctor said I may have PCOS, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't think so. So I actually had to start taking my blood glucose level every morning using like the prick kind of thing in your finger. Man, it was a whole ordeal. I kind of like have really blanked that out of my memory because this whole time it was like pretty stressful. Just kind of going through all of this at the same time as moving and kind of getting my life together. But when I saw this professor, I think for the first time I could understand, I could see it in her eyes a little bit. Like what I was kind of diagnosed with is called hypothalamic amenorrhea, HA for short. It's a mouthful. And basically it's when your body has basically turned off your, reproductive system, and it's too stressed to be working and to be cycling and to be, having the normal hormone levels. So I had been, I don't know what it comes down to, and she can't tell me either, but I think it's a multitude of taking the pill for so long. And then also, my body went up and down, competing. And I'm also just that kind of like stressed out a little bit person who I used to be. So when I kind of went to her, she gave me a schedule. She was like, okay. She actually told me I shouldn't have a coach because I told her, I used to do this. I still have a coach. I track my macros, I track my weight, all of this stuff. And she's like, okay, we're gonna, change your lifestyle a little bit. And she kind of did it step by step, where she was like, okay, now you can only take less than 5,000 steps a day. You can only do light yoga. You can't do like strenuous yoga. You can't do any cardio. Like everything in my life was turned upside down. And but at the same time, I listened to her, and I was like, I had this trust in her that I was just like, okay, this is my new goal. It's no longer to, look my best. It's, I want to recover, and it took a lot. It really did at that time, like not tracking my macros, which I've been doing for years, not knowing kind of what's going in my body, not being active is like a huge thing for me. That's like one of the main parts of my day every day. And just having that time in the gym where for me it's almost therapy. Yeah. You go in there, you switch off, you do what you want to do, you kind of like push however much you want to push. And that's really hard for me to be taken away in an instant. It's super hard. And she wanted to switch out, bodybuilding and weight training and cardio for like a hobby. And at first I'm like, oh geez, here we go. Like, I don't know, am I going to start? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a reader, but I started reading, and, I really did try to get into like doing more kind of like homely type activities, not expending energy. I had to like meditate, which is really hard for me in my mind that goes at 100 miles an hour. So yeah, I had to make all these changes, and I still kept Angela as my coach, but I didn't take any progress photos or videos. I kind of just had her to talk to, I think, more than anything. And it was more like an outlet where she would support me. I would tell her what my specialist said, and she would totally be 100% on board. And she would push me to, to stop these things and to really listen to what she's saying. And, to this day, I still work with her, and, I never stopped having her, but I think it just changed perspective a little bit. And she's been able to really support, and be a cheerleader for my recovery. And I just love her for that. So I think really having someone in your corner is really helpful, to really understand where, like, this journey was so hard. Like, I don't know anyone else that's gone through such a long journey. It took me like a year and a half, and I only just hit like what I'm calling my recovered state now. It was probably one of the hardest things I've done. Probably much harder than a prep, much harder than pushing yourself, really expending energy. It's like doing the total opposite, which is like the opposite to anything I've done since I was like a kid. And sitting on my butt, not doing anything, that's totally not me. So yeah, it was crazy hard. And, I only just started in the last few months reincorporating like my heavy weight training, pushing myself a bit more, because I could see that my body was getting back to like a good state of, homeostasis, where my hormones were better. I was cycling in a more regular, like quite lengthy, but still, quite regular. It was getting better and better and better. So, I could start pushing a little bit more and see how my body responded. And it's only now that I feel like I'm getting back to that stage where I can push a little bit more. But that took a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of learning and a lot of being uncomfortable. Like, I put on, from stage weight, probably 20 to 24 pounds. And that obviously wasn't the plan in my head. Like, I didn't want to surpass like 10 pounds, but you can't really, like, when you're diagnosed with something like that, you can't have any parameters on, your aesthetic looks come last, and your weight is last, and you shouldn't even know your weight at that time, because you can't fix your mind on something. You have to really just mentally and physically de-stress, and it's all about not having stress and not having these, things that can kind of, you can fixate on. And it was, incredibly hard. But I think having people that really understand or try to understand in your corner is, really important. And, my partner has been incredible as well. So yeah, it's been hard and been very, very uncomfortable with, how my body is. Of clothes not fitting the way they used to, and, you know, not looking as what I, you know, used to see in the mirror and things like that. But all in all, I think for me, I understand that getting older, health is number one. You know, it's not the way I look in the mirror. It's actually like, what is inside and how is that working? And if that's not going to work for you, then what's your long term? Like, you can't continue in this sport if your body's not working. So, you know, the stage is always going to be there, and I always knew that, and I love competing, and I love that grind, and that mindset. But I knew I had to go through this journey, however long it's going to take me, to get to, you know, a healthy level. So yeah, to this day, I kind of like, that's up until today, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, I try to find this balance now where I can push a bit more in the gym, but I'm not going crazy. You know, if I'm going to have a bite of a cookie or something, then that's cool. You know, I'm not so fixed on a number on the scale, or, you know, are my glutes popping? Is my waist as, you know, tight as it used to? No, like, I know that. But I'm still trying to build. I'm still trying to use this as somewhat an off season for my mind as well as my physique. And I think that's like super important when it comes to, you know, competing and also having a life outside of competing. It kind of goes both ways. So yeah, wow. I don't know how long I just went on for, but
it was so important and so valuable. And it's a journey that unfortunately many athletes do need to go on at some point, or have been on, and it brings up so many struggles. So I have no doubt that everything you shared is resonating with athletes out there, whether they're starting that hormone health journey or they've been on it. Like, so much of what you said resonated with me, like intentional stress relief, intentional weight gain, letting go of the physique and aesthetics in order to pursue something else. And sometimes it feels like you're throwing shit at the wall, hoping something will stick. And that can be frustrating. And then you're like, I need to reduce stress, but this is stressing me out, and life in general. So yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this. And it's leading me to wonder let me back up a little. I think we all tend to have that like all or nothing mentality, or maybe that like super driven, committed, like everything's routine and structured, because that's what helps us be so successful as competitors. But then we go through things like that, and I think it can change our perspective on like what all actually means based on the circumstances that we're in. So I'm curious if this journey you're on has maybe changed or is going to inform how you approach bodybuilding in the future if you do compete again.
Yeah, I think I used to be just like super all or nothing. You know, if I'm in a prep, I would not go 1 gram off my macros. Like I'm that person. And I think that's a good habit to learn, but it's also a good habit to be able to turn on and off. And I think only through going through a journey and being able to, you know, go through something a little bit more health related, where you have to kind of take 10 steps back and be like, well, why am I doing this? Like, is this even normal? Like, now I think of it, you know, you're so embedded in that bodybuilding world. You surround yourself, or at least I did, with other competitors, you know, and you don't know anything different. You don't think it's like abnormal to be, you know, weighing everything that, you know, you put in your mouth, or getting sugar-free this, or, you know, tracking all your steps to a T, your everything. And I think now I can have that balance where I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to do, instead of my cardio today, I'm going to do a spin class because I feel like, you know, I feel like riding a bike today, you know, and I don't care if that the next day is, okay, cool, I'm going to go for a walk, you know, around my area. Like, I think if I go into a prep, yes, I'm going to be all or nothing, but I think when I'm, you know, more in this kind of off season where, yes, I'm trying to build, but I'm still trying to maintain a healthy life and a balance between being that I'm still uber focused, but I think I'm focused in different ways. I think I can focus on my work. I think I can focus on my relationships, on, you know, my new goals, but I can still have a little bit more of a balance in terms of my fitness and my food. And it's really hard to get out of that kind of mindset. Even going into reverse, you're still really focused because that's just as important as the prep, right? But after you kind of go through that reverse, I think it's important to be able to maybe do like a 1 day off tracking, you know, 1 day on. Maybe you need to kind of like work with your coach to see what kind of limitations you can put on really, you know, really creating that super uber focused routine. You need to be able to break out of that a bit, and you need to be able to live. And that doesn't mean putting on weight. You know, living doesn't mean putting on weight. And I think that for a lot of competitors is the hardest part. They think, okay, yeah, I'm not going to track macros. I'm going to put on weight. You know, the scale is going to be up, and, you know, my sodium is going to be higher, and I'm going to retain water and this, that, and the other. Like, cool. Like, you're in an off season. You need to be able to live. You need to be able to enjoy moments in life. You need to be able to have memories with your friends, with your family. And tomorrow you're not going to put on 10 pounds. Like, it's just insane that I used to think, you know, certain things would just create a cascade of effects that God knows what will happen. And I think really putting it into like a little bit of a microscope where you're just you're a competitor, and the whole rest of the world is living in like a non-competitor way, and look at them thrive. Like, there's life outside of that, and you need to be able to balance, you know, dip your toe in a little bit if you want, or dip your toe out. Like, that's cool too. And I think just, yeah, by experience, that's something that you learn, and really having the support system is important too. But yeah, definitely a journey that I think everyone kind of needs to be on in their own way. Yeah.
I love that perspective. And I think it's important too that, like, as competitors, we are able to step back and even just have visual representation of other things in life that matter. Like on Instagram, for example, like, expand your feed. Like, if you like art, follow art. If you like travel, follow travel. If you like, if you want to be a mom someday, maybe follow fertility or motherhood or parenting, or, you know, get other views in your head. Because I think it's easy as competitors, like, our feed gets just filled with it, and we forget that the world outside of this and outside of the gym, and it's different. And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. I think, well, again, I would argue it is a good thing, but it's just important, I think, to continue to expose ourselves to that and engage in other hobbies and interests of our own that sometimes I think fall by the wayside because we just get so laser focused. And I love how you said, some days now, if you want to go and do a spin class, you just do that, or you want to go on a walk in your neighborhood, you do that. And I think being able, like you said, to turn it off or turn it on is important, because if we want longevity in this sport and we want fulfillment, we should have some sense of freedom of choice as well. Like, we need to have that choice mentality. And if having variety supports that, then that will benefit us long term. And I think that comes with, like, giving ourselves choice and seeing there's many different ways to have that fulfillment or have those goals attained.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm still quite focused on goal setting and being in the gym and, you know, building my body and all that kind of stuff, you know, but when it comes to giving myself space, giving myself that freedom to be able to go to dinner, and to work that into my macros now, like, I'm okay with that. You know, and if my weight goes up one day, like, that's fine, because, you know, that's what life is. And life is just a collection of memories. And do you want your collection of memories to be you at home eating from Tupperware every single day, day in, day out, even when you're not competing. Like, I think it comes down to making these memories. And, I think that comes with getting older. I'm getting old. And I kind of look on, my family and my friends, and everyone's kind of getting into this next stage of life where I'm like, you don't want to be just looking at your life as if you've been in this kind of like sheltered, way the whole time. And I think you can see other people enjoy life the way they are without bodybuilding, without even knowing what a scale, macros are. And they can thrive, and they're loving where they're at. And I think kind of seeing that for myself, and being like, coming back to Australia and seeing everyone kind of being in that stage, I'm like, okay, yeah, I should be there too. I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to, do what I love, but also thrive in that other way. So that's kind of where, I came back, and I was able to like look at it a little bit in that light, and not so much be just in that world and can't get out, and all I see is bodybuilding on my feed. And, yes, my feed is full of those people, but I can see, I feel like I'm more of a normal person now, where I can really dip into that bodybuilding mindset if I need, but I feel like I can also dip on out, which I don't think many competitors can do so much now. And it's really, it's a struggle. It really is. And as much as you try to learn that routine and get in that mindset and to be in grind mode, like, that's really hard to do. You need to unlearn that, and you need to be able to learn how to live without that. And I think that's just as hard as a challenge as to learn it, that it goes both ways. So, yeah.
That's super insightful. I really love that too, because we don't often hear that in this space. So I have a feeling people just listening to you and your confidence in that, and seeing how it's affected you positively, knowing you're still focused and still going after your goals. Like, we have to remember that being focused and going after our goals can look different in different seasons and based on our needs, and like, needs will evolve with us. And you said life is a collection of memories. And now that you're getting old, how old are you, by the way, Steph?
My birthday is coming up. I believe I'm turning 33. Don't
I love
question
that.
me on that. I don't know. When you hit 30, it's kind of like a blur. I
honestly lose track even now. Like, the only thing that I sometimes remember is I'm like, okay, like, I had my Jordan year, and then like I had the like, what's funnier than 24, 25, and I'm like, okay, so I'm 20. Like, I go through that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
somewhere there.
Yeah, it's a rage.
That's it.
So what do you envision for your life moving forward? Like, what do you want your collection of memories to look like?
That's the key question, isn't it? Look, I'm always super focused on having goals, and I'm always been active. I've always, been to the gym, and I'm still building that, bikini physique, if you will. I'm still working with Angela, and, I still have that kind of mindset, but I'm able to, have that balance and, get to that next level at work and really push there. And I think it's more for me about, you're getting into the stage where a lot of my friends have kids, or they're having a second kid, and, we just bought a house. So that's kind of a new thing for us, me and my partner.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I think as life kind of rolls on, this stage for me will always be there. And I think it's a lifestyle. And I've always been living this similar lifestyle, even before competing. I watched what I ate. I knew what was, fueling me. I would do weight training, which is very different to the weight training I do now, by the way. And, you know, I used to do cardio and classes and this, that, and the other. I did F45, like religiously. I did everything that you could ever think of. And I think what stuck with me with bodybuilding is that this is a balance. This is a lifestyle, and this is the way that you actually choose to live your life, rather than, you know, doing an F45 class or, you know, trying to get skinny at the gym. You know, this really gives you that balance where you can really keep goals at work, you know, have time with your friends and family, go on trips, but you can still maintain that healthy body, that, you know, hopefully physique that you like or working towards. And I think the stage for me will always be there. And in Australia, especially, the stage is not really there. I know you've had like some Aussie competitors on, and, you know, there's for the pro stage, probably 2 competitions a year. So it's pretty hard to compete here as a pro unless you go, you know, back to the States or whatnot. But I still love the lifestyle, and I at one stage I will want to go back to the stage. I love that thrill. I love the grind. I love getting in that mode and being able to switch on, seeing your body kind of like respond and all that kind of stuff. But I think my focus had been so much on recovery from HA that, you know, that was my one focus. And now I'm at the stage where I'm kind of just living, and I am working with my coach to kind of get to a little bit more of a physique where I'm a little bit more happy with the way I am. You know, my clothes fit maybe a little bit better, so that I can be a little bit more confident, and to be in that kind of like off-season type building mentality while not being super crazy anal about it.
Totally.
And I think that's probably like the best place to be, right? You know, you're pretty confident in your physique, you're able to hit the gym, you don't have crazy amounts of cardio, you're able to go to a friend's, you know, picnic or birthday, and enjoy those things and still strive for that physique, and still be able to, you know, if you want to go into prep, you know, in next year or whatever, you can do that. But don't let things get in your way. Don't let that next job that, you know, you're moving to, like, don't let anything stop you. I'm all for goals. I'm all for kind of like leveling up, and whether that's in work, in life, or in, you know, having a kid, or, you know, whatever it is, like, just have that balance and be able to be, you know, grateful that everything's there for you. Your health is there. I think that's the one thing that I've learned. You know, health is number one. Family is right up there too, and then, you know, everything comes after. So yeah.
So you've really learned through this sport and through these trials that you've faced and the various seasons that you've been in, like what really matters to you and what's important to you. And you just said that family is very important to you, and you referenced your partner earlier and how he's been super supportive. So I was actually curious, like, did you guys meet in LA? Were you already together in Australia before you came to the US?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot, actually. But no, he's also Aussie. So we actually met here in Sydney. He was a professional dancer.
Wow.
So when I say dancer, people get a lot of connotations in their head. But don't get me wrong, it's more like, you know, doing live stage shows, tours, music videos, and events and all that kind of the cool stuff, right? So I used to dance casually at Sydney Dance Company, which is a big company here in Sydney. And I used to do a few like casual classes, and I ended up with one of my friends doing one of his classes just on a whim, which was way out of my like very ballet lyrical type training that I've done. He used to teach a JFH class, which is jazz, funk, hip hop. So I was way out of my league, like this ballet kind of girl going into this like hip hop type class. Like, it's just a funny memory, to be honest.
That's awesome.
So I met him there, and then we kind of hit it off. And at the time, he was in the process of getting his visa to go to LA, which is a huge process for an artist. So he needs heaps of paperwork. It's just a giant undertaking for his type of visa. And at the same time, I was working in design. I was a product designer here. And I really wanted to work and have that experience overseas. And my two places were the US and London. And so I met him at the time. We actually took a trip to LA and the States and traveled around there for 3 months together. Very early on in our relationship. Actually, I think it was 1 or 2 months in. I don't know how that kind of worked out, but it did. And, it brought us together, and he did some training over there like he used to do most years in LA. And we traveled, and, then after that, I was like, well, why don't I try and get a visa to LA as well if you're moving? Things were kind of progressing, and we're officially together. And I had to get a different type of visa because, I would be on a specialty, type of work visa. So the way that happened was that
taken anywhere?
Not really. So I had to get a job in LA from Australia.
Okay.
So that was really, really challenging. I was just sending emails, trying to get to people. But when the word visa comes up to a company, that's just a red flag. They're like, no, time, money, lawyers, all of that kind of stuff. But I got lucky enough to get employed by this agency over there. And then, got a job from Australia and got my visa, went over there. We went over there together. He did his thing doing his professional dance stuff, and I was working full time. And we never had a time limit on staying there, but it definitely wasn't 7 years. It was, we'll definitely come back to Sydney because this is just home for us. But we ended up staying there for quite a while, and COVID definitely extended that time a bit more. But we went there together and we left together, and we're still together now. So I guess it's a fairy tale ending.
Yeah, it seems like the dream became reality.
Yeah. I mean, and he's always been super positive. He, as I said, he used to be a dancer, but he kind of transitioned into more fitness, personal training and group fitness training. So that's what he does now. And so he's watched my journey and been a huge supporter. I think at the start, it's kind of it's a bit of a crazy thing to be tracking all your food to someone that has no idea what's going on and why you're doing it. And I think as he saw how I could, transform my physique, he was like, wow, okay, you can do that what are you doing? And then he kind of was able to see what I was doing, and I would explain to him what my coach was, changing throughout my prep and off season. And he kind of learnt from that as well. And, he knows fundamentals and kind of follows a very, open kind of, balanced lifestyle as well. So we're kind of in it together. And he, during the week, we train together, and he really pushes me. He's really good at programming. So we train together sometimes, which can be good and bad, right? But he really does push me, and I love him for that. And so he understands what I do and is a huge supporter, and that's really hard to find. And luckily we don't have too many sweets in the cupboard, which is nice because I'm such a dessert person. But he understands, and I think having a coach, having an outside eye as well is really important. Even if Angela's back in the States, that really doesn't matter. So it's we're kind of just living that life together.
Aw, that's really, really cool. Does he ever want to compete?
Oh no, absolutely not. I think when people ask him, hands down, no. I think he just likes to know, you know, the kind of method behind the madness, if you will. But he's not kind of a big, you know, he's not genetically a bodybuilder or anything like that. And I think for a guy, it's a whole nother world of, like to be competitive in the male on the male stage is a whole nother thing than you know, in the bikini division. So he's, you know, great at training and loves to kind of just like taper that like you would in, you know, a prep or off season, but absolutely not.
That's just so cool though, that he's really immersed himself into the lifestyle with you and been so supportive through all of the ups and downs and changes, because that is bodybuilding. Like there are ups and downs and there are lessons learned, and our habits change with each season, and we evolve so much. Which actually, have you learned anything about yourself or your body that you maybe haven't shared yet through bodybuilding?
Ooh. Look, I know I am a very like type A person, and I think throughout my recovery process I had to kind of try and be a little bit less type A, I think, in at least in some categories of my life. And that's something really hard for me to unlearn. I think in terms of my body, I had to let a little bit of my kind of like perfect, you know, perfectionist mentality go out the window. And I had to kind of be able to just get into my stretchy leggings and be okay with that. And I think that that's something that, you know, every competitor kind of goes through. But I've learned to really accept who I am as a person, and I understand a little bit more what my personality is like and how other people may perceive it. I think that's like, I think I do get sometimes too much in a mindset where like I'm too focused on something and I need to kind of detach a little bit. And in some ways, yes, that definitely does come from competing. And that's something you learn to do, and you in some ways you have to unlearn to do that and kind of see what you're doing in someone else's perspective. And, you know, tracking to the gram in off season maybe isn't the focus you should be doing. But I think having an appreciation for my body, that sounds really, like, for me to say that sounds very strange to me, but it's kind of true in that everyone's so resilient and everyone's body will work with you if you work with it. And that's both, you know, mind and body. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to, you know, recover. I'll take a few supplements, you know, and do nothing mentally about that. You really have to take it upon yourself to, you know, sit there and dedicate your next, you know, few stages, next weeks, next month, however long it takes, to whatever goal you have. You need to work out what those steps are and do it. And for me, you write a little list, and every day I have things to do. And that changed from, you know, cardio, X amount of steps, track my macros, to more of a list like, okay, now I need to set my goals today. I need to meditate. I need to, you know, like just little things. Like I still have that type A mentality, but it's kind of, I was able to shift it a little bit. And yeah, just kind of having that kind of being able to mentally see yourself as well as physically. I think it's hard. It's hard to kind of have those two mindsets, but be able to reflect on where you've come, what you're doing now, and what you're kind of going to do next. I think that's big for me.
And I think you bring up a good point. Like you can channel that energy and channel those things that we love to get from bodybuilding or have satisfied from bodybuilding into other areas of our life. you specifically said earlier too, you tend to ask a lot of questions, and I could see that
Oh yeah. Oh God.
you thrust yourself into the research for your body's health, and you ask questions
Mhm.
of your coach, and you made it very clear that if someone wasn't willing to answer questions, they were not going to be a good fit for you. So
Yeah.
can you, because you've got experience with this, can you give us maybe a couple to five, I don't know, however many you want, questions for people to consider asking their coach, whether they've hired them or not, but maybe just some
Mm.
questions you've found to be really insightful when you asked?
Oh, to find a coach, you mean?
It could be anything. It could even be like when you've been working with your coach and you ask a question and it like really sparks some interesting insight. Like, what are some key questions you think we should be asking?
Mm-hmm. To me, like I ask all the questions. So um, it really depends on where you're at in your journey. But I think for a coach, number one, finding a good coach that you respect, you get along with. I think that's really important. And someone that answers your questions, that's like key for me. You can't just have a coach that tells you what to do. I think it goes both ways. If they're going to tell you that, we need to do more cardio this week and we're going to drop 10 grams of carbs, and you don't know why, you need to ask that question, and they need to be able to answer you and explain why they're doing certain things so that you can learn from it. And I think it's a coach and client relationship. You should be learning things along the way as much as they're learning things from you. And I think throughout bodybuilding, you should be able to, after, maybe an off season and an on season, be able to learn those methods and those ways to be able to do this in your own life, to be able to live a balanced life without a coach. You should be able to learn those fundamentals of health and, exercise. Not necessarily know everything, but you should be able to learn from them throughout the journey. So things that I would ask, that's tough. Yeah, I definitely think once you're getting feedback, if you have any questions on why they changed your plan, ask why and understand why. There's no use in just kind of taking information and doing it and executing, which is great. But if you don't know why you're executing something in a certain way or why something's changed, then you need to know. And also everyone's body is so different that, like, if something doesn't work and they're not telling you why it's not working, or they're trying a different method, like, you need to know that, so that you can take cues for your own life and your own body. If you're talking to another competitor and they're going through their prep and their coach is doing something totally different, like, it can get a little bit confusing. So understanding why certain things are done. And I guess thinking about, going from my first coach to Fit Body Fusion, I think asking if they have a solid off-season plan and what that plan is for you specifically. I know when I kind of went from that first team, I did a whole set of interviews because I'm just that person. I did a whole, I interviewed all these different teams and coaches to see which one I would want to go with, or if I even wanted to compete, honestly, at that time.
Yeah.
So I asked all the questions, being that super curious, annoying person. And I think I went with Fit Body because they were able to look at me, understand where I was in my journey, and to be able to tell me what they would do in a prep and also what their methods were out of a prep and in an off season. And I think that's super important. This off season is key to any competitor's journey. And I think if your coach doesn't have that in store for you, doesn't have your plan, ready for you after you hit the stage, then there's a problem there. And if it's a cookie cutter plan, huge red flag. Like, if you and your friend in the same team have the same meals or the same diet plan, have the same peak week protocol, oh my God, run. Run the other direction, because you're just gonna feel like, your body is so different to the next person. Even if you're the same height, you're the same weight, like, it works in such a different way. And I think comparing my first prep to all my other ones is like shines a light on that. Like I used to, in my first prep, I remember I used to walk to work, and it wasn't that far, maybe 15, 20 minutes, like flat road in LA, not many hills there. And I used to remember I would have to mentally be like, okay, get to that next corner. You can sit down on that, you know, that person's fence and have a rest. And then we'll get to the next corner and to the next corner. And this was like a leisurely, like 20-minute stroll, super easy walk. But I was so depleted, and cardio twice a day, like it was madness. And I thought that's what I needed to be doing. And I thought that's what everyone did. And I didn't understand why I was doing all this, but I didn't ask the questions at the time because I didn't know. But as I kind of went through that first prep and saw other teams and got to know, you know, other competitors and people on Instagram, I'm like, why am I feeling so crap? Like, why am I eating dry oats and not having water? And, you know, and I look back at my photos, I'm like, I look like an old woman on stage. I'm just like, it's so embarrassing. But you kind of look back and you're like, man, things can be done in such a better way. And if you find that those people that you can work with that can answer your questions and that are really help guiding you, then that's the coach you need. And some coaches won't, you know, some competitors don't ask questions, and that's fine. I'm just the complete opposite, and I need to know what's happening. And I think being a little bit inquisitive, if you're not inquisitive or asking questions, I think trying to ask a few questions and learning about why they're doing what they're doing with you becomes really important, because you are paying them for a service and you want to get something out of it. Even if you look awesome, you get your pro card, whatever, what can you say you've learned? You know, what can you kind of tell them, like, you know, about your body and what they did? Or can you just say, I followed the plan? Like, cool, great, you followed the plan, but what did that plan do? What, like, how did that work? You know, you should have a general idea of what kind of happens, so that you can go away with that knowledge. And, you know, rather than just kind of executing every day. I think that kind of gives a good background to why you're doing certain things.
I agree. And, you know, it took me time to learn. I learned the long way. It took me a while, because I think when you're in it and you're so deep in it and you're just executing, you're like happy with the result. And then there's part of you that knows it could be better, it could be different, you want more. And for me, I was in this mindset where I just felt I was ahead of where my previous coach was at, like where I just needed more. And like, I wanted the detail and I wanted the breakdown. I wanted everything. And I wanted it to be so specific and unique and clear that it was for me and only me, that like, I knew how my body was responding. And so like, I can totally relate to that experience. And I didn't do an extensive, well, I guess you could say I did, because I had the coaches series on the podcast, but like I didn't do an extensive like research process. And I appreciate that you shared your experiences from the past and how you went about finding something that was a better fit for you. And I love that we can be open about those experiences. And something I want to acknowledge and say that's really appreciated in this moment about you is how open you've been about not just your journey to pro card and the challenges that came with that and seeing your body change over time, but your willingness to learn and your willingness to let go and adapt and evolve. I think that will likely, as it already has, continue to contribute to your success in anything that you do. So I just wanted to say that. And of course, I want to leave the floor open to you now and ask if there's anything I didn't ask you that I should have before we get your best advice, although you've given us such great advice already.
Oh, no, I honestly am just telling you my journey. I mean, if one competitor, one person can learn anything off what I've gone through, then, you know, I've kind of made my day.
100%. It's already done.
And yeah, I think my biggest kind of learning yet is this HA journey I've been on. And I haven't met anyone that's been in the same shoes as me. And I think that's just something that was really hard because of that, because I couldn't share that journey with someone else and share my struggles. And being in a prep is similar, but there's so many other people in prep at the same time. But so you can relate to other competitors. But being in a journey that's seriously flipped itself on its head from a prep, where you're unlearning things, where you're putting on weight, where you're doing everything opposite to what you've learned, is insane. And I challenge anyone to try and, try it for a week, because doing it for a year and a half was just a mental craziness. And I think if anyone's going through a health journey, whether it be HA or something else, don't hesitate to try and get that support. Even if it's trying to find the right specialist for you, go and search. There's someone out there that's going to get along with you, that's going to talk to you as a person, and not on a different level as you. And I think, there's so much that I've gone throughout that health journey, and it doesn't even seem like when I'm like, oh yeah, it's just like I had HA, like whatever. Some people have had it and they just kind of snap back, and that's fine. That's great for them. But when you've had it for so long, it really does push you to change, and it pushes you to change your mindset. And I'm grateful that I've gone through that. Of course, I would love to have gotten, into recovery much faster. And that just wasn't for me. And I always go by, the saying, everything happens for a reason. In any aspect of my life, I'm like, okay, something shitty happened on the weekend, but everything happens for a reason. And then I go on with my life. And I think that this whole journey is that, yes, it happened for a reason. And now I can look back at certain things and be like, yeah, maybe I was a little bit crazy doing, X, Y, and Z. But now I can kind of change that part of my life, and, have a better relationship here, and, be happy with myself and who I am, and try and accept myself with where I'm at this point in time. And that's still an ongoing journey. Like, I'm still not comfortable in the way that my physique looks. And, that's something that I think all competitors will probably struggle with for years after they compete. And that's, something that you probably have in the back of your mind once you start competing. That your body you'll never look at your body exactly the same. Like, that it can be at this awesome peak of just looking super like amazing on stage, and you're so proud of where you got into, and you feel so lean, and you can take all the photos and every angle looks awesome. And now you're like, oh shit, like I can only take a few, like I take a lot of photos, and one of them is okay, I guess. But you always know that you're going to judge yourself in that way, but you need to be okay with that. And I think going through something harder, that pushes yourself to really change your outlook on what is your goal in life, why are you doing this, what is your long-term goal outside of competing, and then having that balance. I think it really puts a light on you as an individual. And if you as an individual is just a competitor, then you need to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit. Even if you're in the depths of prep trying to get your pro card and that's your life, yes, that's your life at that point in time. But you need to be able to tell me, what is your goal other than, getting a pro card. There is so much more to you as a person, and to you in 10 years, 20 years time, that you need to also have that in the back of your mind. So yeah, it's just kind of something as you get older, I guess, however old I am.
I love that so much. Like knowing there's got to be deeper meaning to all of this. Like we really have to have deep intrinsic drivers to not just keep going, but to make meaning of what we do. Because what we commit to and what we challenge ourselves with on a day-to-day basis, well, actually, that brings a lot of meaning to life itself, but then also we need to have reasons for doing that and know that it's making an impact. And I I know I had prompted you with your best advice, and that was really beautiful. Is there anything you want to add for people who have never competed for but would like to, or anyone on their road to pro?
Ooh, yeah, I think as a new competitor, I think you have to be able to live the lifestyle before.
Yeah.
Um, if you're thinking about competing and that really excites you, I think maybe take, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and set yourself some goals. Be like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a long walk 3 days a week, and I'm going to stick to, what I think clean eating is. And I'm going to get 10,000 steps a day, like very basic goals, right? And see if you can stick to that yourself for a number of weeks. Because living that lifestyle is going to be the backbone of everything you do. And I, for instance, was living that lifestyle before I even started competing. So it wasn't that different to what I was doing in my life. But if you have to 180 your life to be able to do your first comp, then you need to take a few steps in between,
Yeah.
to get yourself prepared mentally and physically for what is going to come. And I think, trying that, having that little trial period just with yourself is really going to be a good test to see if you're into it. Not everyone gets into it and loves it. There's only certain people that actually hit the stage. There's tons of people that start a prep, but then just like hate it, and it's only, as a certain type of person, us crazy people, that actually do this as a life and get on stage and all that. And it's not a disappointment. It's not something that, you should be unhappy with if you don't like it. You can still, get a great physique for a shoot or something like that. It doesn't mean any ill will if you can't stick to a plan. It's not for everyone. So I think having that little bit of a trial period in your own life to see if it actually is for you, and I think that's something for a new competitor. Someone on the road to pro, I think, for me, as a smaller member of the muscle kind of physique, especially at my height, don't be afraid to take that off season. And I know every competitor probably says this, but take an actual off season. And I don't mean like take a month, because that's really not going to do much. I don't know if you're like, if you're going to take something, that's a different story. I don't know much about that. But to build actual muscle, you need time, and you need to be patient, and you need to eat and fuel yourself. So don't be afraid to take an off season, because when you hit that stage again, you're going to come in with a different physique altogether. So there's no use just going back to the stage, just showing the same physique. You need to come back better. And also, if you're in the, nationals kind of grinds, keep showing up. They remember your face. And if you're up there in first callouts and in the mix, show up and, slightly tweak things, work with your coach on the feedback. And they will notice you. Like every time I went there and I got feedback, they remembered my face. Sandy knew my name. Yeah. She remembered everything about me, and she's so great at, giving you feedback. And if you do that feedback for the next show, she will reward you for that. And you just need to show up, show your face, and hands down, enjoy the experience. Because I look back on my national journey and I'm like, man, that was so much fun. I wish I could do that again. And now that you're in another league, it's just like you're a baby again, and you need to grow into the sport once again, from the bottom of the ladder. So, that's a whole nother journey in itself. But I think enjoying the experience, take that off season, and just, yeah, make friends, even if they're not in your team, you know, like it's all about that moment. Even if you come, you know, 1 point from your pro card twice, like I did, and it was super disheartening. Like I look back and I'm like, man, if I got it on my first go, like I wouldn't have those memories. I wouldn't have that journey. I wouldn't have met those people. And I just love the experience that I went through. So as much as that's hard for someone in the midst of their pro season and trying to get their pro card, like it is really about the memories and what struggles you went through and what you learned from that one stage day that will take you on this journey to one day get your pro card. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Man, I just really appreciate you sharing your insights, sharing your journey, and giving us things to really consider for our journey. I mean, what you just said really resonated with me as I'm preparing to go again on stage and hit the national show
crazy.
again. So it's like, it's meaning, and it's always been meaningful for me, but those words really hit home. So can you let everybody know how they can connect with you, follow your journey, and support you along the way?
Yeah, so I'm not huge on the old sharing my whole life, but I do share on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Steph Hing, one word, so the STEPHHING _. Yeah, I'm on there, and I'm always happy to help people. If you DM me, especially if you have questions about HA or, you know, like that type of stuff. I've been through it all. I asked a million questions, as you know, and I'm happy to answer them as well.
I was just thinking that.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, if someone knows like that question thing, it comes up all the time. I'm not even joking. Like, and one of my friends back in the States, this is a funny story. We were having like a kind of a night out, and he was into farming. So he used to live on a farm, and so different to my life, right? And he kind of alluded to, this is so off track, but anyway.
It's okay, I love it.
He had like all this cattle, and he was talking about how they used to like move the cattle from one part of the farm to the other. And it was just like fascinating to me. I think I asked like 20 questions. And at the end, he was like, are you screwing with me? Like, why are you asking me all these questions? And I genuinely was so interested at like the most random topics. Like I just want to know things and why things are done. Like, although I'd never needed to like dig into that kind of memory bank after the fact, but things are so interesting to me. And I think just like learning is just, yeah, like just learning in your life, whatever if it's about farming or your body, you know, it's all fascinating. And I think, yeah, just keep on learning. There's no bad in learning and educating yourself in whatever medium that is. Yeah, that's just me.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think it's awesome that you're opening up the dialogue for others to consider that too. And it's like you have a curious and inquisitive mentality. And that's like honestly, I find that so fulfilling in life. And I personally ask people a lot of questions about themselves too, like hence me being an interviewer, but like I find people so fascinating too. And I just love that we can all connect and talk and learn about each other or learn about things like you just explained with your friends. So I'll make sure to put your Instagram handle in the show notes page. You guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're looking for this episode in the future, scroll down to the category section. It's alphabetized and find Steph's name there. If you're listening right away, it'll be at the top of the page. And not only will you see how you can connect with her and any other resource links, but you're also going to see full episode timestamps. You can go back to particular parts of the episode, a summary of the episode itself, topics covered, so you'll know exactly what to tell your teammates and friends to look out for when you're recommending this episode. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in every week and sharing this and tagging us. It means so much to me. It means so much to the athletes. It's the reason why we've continued to be able to connect and grow and just expand this. And it's been such a pleasure. So Steph, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a dream of mine. So thank you for feeling that.
Oh, that's so freaking cool. It's my pleasure. Seriously. Like I knew this day would come and I'm so happy it has.
Yeah, thank you so, so much. Appreciate it.
Of course. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it